Some kind of countdown or something? Hey, we're live.
Hey, we're live. Those are questions from before we started.
Yeah, well,
which is
here we are.
Earlier than right now.
Yep. That's what happens when you do something for the first time.
Exactly.
You figure it out as it's happening.
This is supposed to be a trial run kind of situation.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to call it that.
That's what it is. And, okay, good. Turn off my sound there. All right. We're on YouTube, y'all. We're on YouTube. We don't have an audience yet.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I thought we were going to do a countdown for people. Oh. That's what I was saying.
Okay, because we could do a countdown or something.
Well, it's too late now. You do the countdown at like 12:50 to 1.
Why don't you say that at 12:45?
Oh my God.
You can't tell me now to do something 10 minutes ago.
This is what happens.
I can do a countdown. Ready?
No.
There we go.
We lost a viewer during that 30 seconds.
Did we?
So welcome to Club PK. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. My name is Clarice Nixon.
I am Paul Nixon.
And well, let me first say, how are you doing, Paul? Before we even start talking about what the show's about.
I'm okay. How about you?
Okay is not allowed.
Okay is not allowed.
No, because it means nothing.
I have several irons in the fire.
Uh-huh.
And a couple of them are very promising. And if even one of them turns out, it might be very life-changing.
Okay.
So
what does that mean? You're excited? I don't know what that means.
Because I'm in limbo.
Okay. We'll work on our emotional intelligence during the Club PK show because
I'm not sure that's what's gonna happen.
That's okay. That's my strength. How are you doing, Claire? I'm stressed out.
Okay.
That's a term. I'm stressed, but I'm also excited because this is an idea that we've talked about before, and it's had a couple of different iterations, but I like the one that we landed on.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I do work with you, even if I'm stressed, it winds up being fun too. So I'm looking forward to it. And also, we have a guest today on the show who I think is just gonna make it more fun. So I'm looking forward to this and figuring out how to do this. This is our first time, but it won't be our last time.
Yeah, for sure. I have a pretty good amount of experience producing these shows. I'm usually backstage pressing all the buttons. I have no experience at all hosting one. So, let's see what happens.
Drew's here.
Drew is here, yeah. And I echo your statement that whenever we work together, it's fun. It's definitely true. Sometimes it's too much fun and we don't actually do anything.
I disagree.
We just have fun.
Even if we just have fun, that's something accomplished in my opinion.
That's true.
So,
yeah. What up, people? And John's here too. So, of course, John is here in spirit. And
So, why don't you introduce the people to what this is and what it's going to be?
So Club PK. So we are we're going to talk to and about pastors' kids. We are PKs ourselves. Our dad is now retired. He was a minister our whole lives, pretty much, until recently. And we find that there's something unique about the life of a pastor's kid. And we're going to try to explore some of those things. Now, other PKs, of course, already know this, but sometimes people who aren't in that space don't necessarily know how our lives are affected by the call of our parents into ministry. So we want to talk about it. We want to talk candidly. We want to talk openly. We want to have fun. We'll laugh. We'll perhaps confess some things. Maybe we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's the idea. And I think this was Claire. I think this was your idea in the first place, Claire. Is that right?
I don't know.
I kind of feel like this is your idea originally, and then we just kind of, like you said, there's been several different versions of this idea, and we finally landed on one that we think is going to work.
I feel like the principle that's probably going to guide us is, how does the calling of a parent affect the life of their children. And in this particular case, we're using the calling of our father. He was a pastor. And just how did that affect our home life, our school life, even our church life, our spiritual experiences, how we view the world. Like there's a lot that goes into being a PK specifically, but also I just think being children of parents who are very much rooted in the thing that they spiritually know they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So they're not going to change that. Like that's the thing.
Right.
And now you're born into this family. And here's the thing. I'm like, I didn't ask.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, here we are. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So look at Dad. Dad said, make sure you confess your own stuff. We're definitely going to talk about anyway.
For sure. But you know, you understand that you're connected to our own stuff because it's your house.
Clearly.
You know.
But also,
yeah, I think that's go ahead.
I want to make a disclaimer. I think we should say this at the beginning of every episode. And that is we in no way want to come across as maligning or being angry about or being resentful toward our actual parents.
Right.
We have amazing parents and they did an amazing job raising us. But there are situations or circumstances that we were born into that the three of us, me, Paul, and John, reacted to differently, period. And that's just going to happen when you have a family. That's just a thing. So we're not mad at you, Dad.
Right. Yeah, we're not. This is not a parent bashing podcast by any means.
Not at all.
And we can't speak for our guests. We can speak for today's guest. He's not going to do any parent bashing either, but we can't speak for our future guests, whether or not they had good relationships with their parents. We'll let them talk about that. But for us, as Nixons, we're not. This is not a parent bashing session for us by any means. I'll say this too. I don't think we intend for it to be a church bashing session either. Although some things might come up where we're dissatisfied with some things, church related. But we're not. This is not a church bashing session either. That's not our goal. I
think it'll be a good opportunity for us to discuss what it means to be a community, which is what church is supposed to be. So there are some things that churches fall short of in terms of community, and there's some things that churches do fantastic in terms of community. So I feel like we could talk about both, and let's just be balanced.
Yeah.
And
there's something you said a few minutes ago that I want to repeat because I think it's a good point of connection for those who are going to watch and listen who are not themselves in the family of ministers. Really what we're talking about ultimately is the idea that you're born into this thing that somebody else kind of chose for you, right? Like this, you have a parent or a guardian or whatever who has this dedication in their life, and then you're born. So there's this thing that's already in place that you are born into and you don't have any choices about. In our case, it's the pastoral ministry, but you might relate to it in some other way. Maybe your parents are, let's just say, a physician or something, and like that's their calling on their life, and that's what they do, and that's what they spend their time and attention and energy on. And then you're born, and it's like, what's your position,
right,
relative to that? For example. So, you said I know a PK who ate a salami sandwich in high school. Is he going to make it to the kingdom? That's a really good segue we can bring our guest on because I think our guest might have been Army
Who
Kids.
he's talking about?
That's a really good. That's Army Kids. It's exactly.
Oh yeah, Army Kids.
Talking about. You could absolutely relate. If your family, if you're from a military family, which we are too. Our mother's brothers were all in the military, so we have military connection as well. But that's definitely a good corollary, right? A good comparison. You have this thing that you're dedicated to, and then you have kids. So anyway.
Let's invite our guest.
Titus said he's not going to make it into the kingdom.
I didn't want to say that earlier, but I'm glad.
Titus has very strong.
I'm glad the comments.
We know what you show. Titus has very strong feelings about pork. So
I live according to the New Testament covenant. Anyway, we won't get into it.
Right.
I'm free personally. But anyway,
you know what I'm saying?
Our guest today, like we said earlier, is also a pastor's kid. He's actually older than both of us because he is our older brother. He's not only a pastor's kid, but he himself went into the ministry.
So he has pastor's kids.
Exactly. He has pastor's kids. And one of the things I hope we get to talk about today is how his experience growing up as a PK has affected how he parents as a PP, pastor parent. Anyway.
PP. Oh,
yeah, whatever.
Pastor parent. No, he's a kid pastor. KP.
He's let's bring him on.
Okay, let's do that. All right, let's try this sound effect. I don't know if it's gonna work, but here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, John Nixon II.
Nope, that didn't work.
Yeah, I barely heard that, but that's good. That's about what we need in this situation. You know what I'm saying, in terms of who's coming on. By the way, we can start with the confession. It obviously was me who had the salami. It wasn't actually a salami sandwich. It was, what was it, Paul?
Charlie Stout.
It was at Charlie Stout. It's called an Italian, something like that. I didn't know pork in it.
Come on.
Hold on. Because at Subway at the time, there was a cold cut trio that was turkey based, and I thought
this is my you knew the whole time face.
No, I didn't know. Listen, hold on. I didn't know at first.
And then.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Look at Drew.
Anyway.
Italians are delicious.
Shelly said it was everything. He's right.
Well, does I have the victory now?
It had all the things. You have the victory, but I'm free, so I can eat all the
exactly.
So,
welcome to our show, John. Thank you for being our first guest.
Thank you. Glad to be on the show.
It was kind of a no-brainer when me and Paul were talking about who to have on. And actually, we originally were just going to be me and Paul talking about our experiences. And as we were talking, we're like, there's a whole person who also grew up in our house who has a different perspective about growing up in our house. So let's invite John on. And of course, if anybody knows John, he's very supportive of kind of whatever you're doing. So, and it's us too. So
oh, that's good. I'm glad you think that.
Yeah.
Try my best to keep up that, appearance.
Yeah, persona. Yeah. You're doing a good job.
There's a veneer that's
I just think people do better when they think you care about it. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. So, that's a very good point.
I actually do care. I'm just kidding. I'm very proud of you guys. This is actually a great idea. I think it's something that, and you guys were talking about it before, and I was in on that meeting. I think it's something that could be cathartic for your guests. And of course, that's, good too. But I think your audience deserves is not the right word, but needs to probably know more about the inner workings of PKs, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about why PKs are the way that they are. And it would be good if people just were more understanding about it. Just so they could be less obnoxious at certain times, maybe more, whatever it is you are when you're more understanding about something. You're usually better about it. Yeah, compassion sometimes is what's necessary. I don't know, less judgmental, whatever. Or, just to find out the tea about what it's like to be a pastor.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also yeah.
So since you brought it up, let's actually start by asking you, John, and I guess I don't know how we're going to do this, if Paul and I will just answer after you, but our first question is for you is, why are PKs so bad? And I want you to answer that however you feel like answering it. Why are PKs so bad is the question.
So what people probably are going to think I'm going to do is say they're not all bad, but I'm not. I'm going to agree with the premise. I do think that most PKs are bad, but only because I think most people have unrealistic expectations of PKs. So I think the word bad can be a relative term, right? So I think most PKs are bad relative to what people think they're supposed to be.
Right.
So that's the only way I'll agree with that. I don't actually think most PKs are actually bad. I think a lot of PKs want to be themselves. A lot of PKs are under pressure because they're trying to be something based on maybe an expectation from church members or even expectation from their parents.
Or for themselves.
Yeah. So I would say most PKs are bad largely because being the child of a pastor is complicated. And you already laid it out for us at the beginning of the show, Claire. You said basically, I'm not called. And it's funny because you said my parents are, and that's even a contentious thing. A lot of spouses of pastors say I was not called.
Right, exactly.
You were called, I wasn't.
Right, that's what they'll say. So I disagree with that. I actually believe that the calling for the spouse is different, but I do think it's a calling as well. And in some ways, I actually have come to the place now where I believe the calling is for the children too. And we can talk about that later. I actually think the expectations about those should be different, and it would be a lot easier for children to accept it if it was done appropriately.
Mm.
So anyway, whatever, there's levels of calling, but anyway, whatever the case is, it's hard growing up as a PK when you were not the one asking for the microscope, and because of the position that your parent holds, there is one, and it's
Right.
hard to live a life where everybody's always watching what you're doing. I mean,
Right.
it's difficult, man.
I just had an idea. I wonder if this is a valid comparison. I'm just thinking about Samson from the Bible. Samson's parents dedicated him to God before he was born.
True.
And took a Nazirite vow for him.
True, because he
for his whole life he
right.
won't eat grapes and he won't touch dead things. He won't cut his whole. He wasn't even born yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was born into a calling very deliberately. Is that similar though? Is that like, you know, you would think that, and I have another idea that's kind of on the other side of this coin, but you know, is it fair to say, or would you think that pastors or you know, pastors and pastor couples, pastor couples would kind of have that mindset before they have children? Like, is that like a thing potentially? We're going to have kids and they're going to be dedicated to God their whole lives, you know?
No. So no, I don't know many pastor couples who think of their having children as being that high stakes.
Okay.
I don't, but I do think it would be better if we as pastor couples went into it more deliberately, like literally helping our kids to understand how they're different because they're pastors' kids, and how they're the same as regular kids, and how we in the household are not going to hold you to a higher standard, but everyone else is going to, and you just have to live with that. You know what I'm saying? I think setting the expectation, and it's crazy because I think kids are way more resilient than we think. You know, the kid has no idea what life is supposed to be like. Their reality is shaped the way that it is, and they think that's how everybody else lives until you tell them differently. So I actually think it's possible to raise your kids in a way that they would understand that they're a Nazirite. because I do think that's an excellent comparison, Paul. This idea that his parents took a vow for him before he was even born, and this dude has to live in accordance with that junk. That's not even fair. Now, that may be partially why he ended up doing the PK thing, and you know,
rebellious,
going out with all kind of girls, and you know what I'm saying, drinking. Because I heard a sermon on this just this week, actually. I don't think you make the connection to this, but there are 3 Nazirite vows. You just mentioned all 3, Paul. And when Samson lost his strength, he had been breaking the other 2 before that. When he got the honey out of the dead lion, he wasn't supposed to touch that. That was breaking his Nazirite vow. And you know he was drunk because I think one of those one times he told Delilah if he drinks or something like that. Whatever it is, maybe she got him drunk each time. That's how he slept so long. I don't know. But whatever the case is, we know he broke those other vows. And by the time he ends up getting his hair shaved, that was the 3rd of the 3. So I think before that, you could say he was living kind of rebellious like a pastor's kid would. So maybe that's a really good comparison. I don't know.
What kind of, since you mentioned drinking and going out with all kind of girls. So you brought it up.
We talked about
I didn't bring it up.
You brought it up.
Okay.
My next question, I really want to know. Do you feel like you were rebellious as a PK? And what did that look like for you? And what was your motivation behind whatever your behavior was?
So here's the weird thing. I'm going to say technically I did not think that I was being rebellious because
I was there, you know.
You were there. But I'm gonna explain it. Okay. So first of all, when I describe what I used to do and what I lived like, there's no question it was opposite of what I was raised to be.
Right.
But for some reason, I always had this strong responsibility to not make mom and dad look bad. So I tried my best not to do things that would fly in the face of their parenting, you know? So the stuff that I did do, I tried to at least keep it private for me, just the way that I describe rebellion is someone who's doing it out in the open on purpose. Usually to make someone look bad. That's how I feel. So I think my behavior was opposite of my upbringing in high school. I'll pick that particular time frame because by the time I got to college, I had rededicated my life to the Lord. In the opening, they have like a student week of prayer or whatever, but it's a week of prayer for the students. Ron Smith was the one that preached it. In that opening session, I got rebaptized and everything, and I really never looked back. But in high school, especially my junior and senior year, there was a lot of stuff that I was doing that was not Christian, let alone PK.
Right.
You know what I'm saying, in terms of how we were raised. And that included partying, dating a bunch of different girls.
You don't have to list all the things.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So
is dating a bunch of different girls?
I was going to finish that sentence, and Paul,
okay,
I was going to say doing things with them that I wasn't supposed to be doing, but Paul didn't, he said I didn't have to do all
you
that.
don't have, I mean, you can say whatever you want. I'm just saying you don't have to, we're not asking for you to list all the things.
Okay, good. So thank you. So my point is the things that you would normally expect that a PK would do, I was doing. But I was trying my best not to do it in a way that would blow back on mom and dad. So that's why I wouldn't describe it as rebellious, but maybe you would. Like, how would you describe it? You were there. I don't know.
So, yeah, and this is Taina saying rebellion is about intent. His intent wasn't to spite his parents or upbringing, so that makes sense to me. I
actually wasn't doing it even to like, because some of my friends, I think, do it to spite God. I wasn't doing that either. I actually had a weird sort of misunderstanding about my position with God at the time. I actually thought that my salvation was secured no matter what I did because of my parents. That's kind of where I was. And I learned later that there was a point at which I was using my own free will and that my salvation was based on me, not them. But it took me really to college to own my own spiritual walk. But before that, I never felt like what I was doing. It was really just trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah, so you were a normal teenager.
That's how I feel. I feel I was being a normal teenager.
And I
think
what
Drew was saying here. Drew says it sounds like most kids, not just PK, not making parents look bad. I mean, and the other side of that too. In some cases, kids are trying to make their parents look bad, regardless of what they do for a living.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So
correct.
That response, one way or the other, is, I would call it normal for any human being. But in our case, I think perhaps the blowback is more, I don't know, damning. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe, the response to making parents look bad might be worse in the community. I'm not sure.
I feel like there's a different kind of pressure for pastors' kids in this way, that when we make a mistake, if it ends up blowing back on our parents, it seems to be higher stakes, so that now people can use that to say, he doesn't have control of his family. How can he control the church? And stuff like that. And, you're just not trying to do anything to like just jack up your parents like that. So I almost feel like even that's unfair. Regular kids can experiment and it's okay, and it won't blow up their parents' career per se. But I always felt that anything that I did could be used as fodder for, our parents' enemies or something.
And that's kind of what I was going to say. Is it more likely that a pastor would receive blowback from the kids acting up?
Definitely.
Versus if my dad was a fireman or
right. Definitely. I feel like, there's several texts in the Bible. One of them says specifically, if he can't control his children, how could he control the church? right. So that makes it really hard. It's almost like we end up being the evidence,
right,
that he's actually
good at his job.
Yeah.
Or able to do his job.
Able to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when you find that, and by the way, let me say to both mom and dad's credit, this is where I think, this is my personal opinion. You guys might not have this opinion because, like you said, we grew up in the same house, but we had different experiences. My personal opinion was I never felt that pressure from mom and dad to be that way. And so I think it made it easier. I felt like there was a pressure from church members and outsiders and anybody that knew I was a pastor's kid. Like I didn't want to tell people I was a pastor's kid most of the time. The moment they found out, they started acting different towards me, and I hated that. And mom and dad never, just for me, never really made me feel like if you don't do this, it's gonna have this impact, or if you do that, it's gonna have that impact. They never did that, and so I never felt like if I do this, dad's gonna be mad at me or whatever. I thought, I thought maybe he'd be disappointed that I was going against his upbringing, or that mom might feel bad in some other kind of way. But I didn't feel like it was tied to their occupation. You know what I'm trying to say?
Or even their spirituality. Because that's the other thing about this job. The job is a spiritual. I think every calling is a calling, but I think being a pastor in particular, it's different.
Yes, it's a career. It's a career in spiritual leadership. So
yeah,
it's different than even a doctor who's, you take care of the body, but the spirit is a different thing. Psychologist, you take care of the mind, but the spirit is a different thing. So spiritual leadership is I would say it is a higher calling, but I guess the question is it fair to subject the children to that higher calling? You know what I mean?
Higher calling, yeah.
So that's an interesting question. I think I don't really like the word fair, but whatever, you said it.
You can use a different word.
I think it's healthy to have expectations for people.
I agree.
I think people are bad at setting realistic expectations.
That's true.
So I don't think the fact that people want expectations for others is an issue, but it does, and a lot of our expectations are also really illogical. Like, they don't even make sense when you sit down and think about it. It doesn't make any sense that just because I'm a pastor's kid, my body should react differently to a sexual image on TV. That doesn't make any sense. I got the same body you got. I'm going through the same weird transitional transformation in my body that you went through when you were this age. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the so why should the expectation be that I'm going to literally be a perfect human being? And the other thing is having, I don't know why I'm talking about sex right now.
Unbelievable.
I don't know how we got here.
We actually heard that sound effect really good.
Yeah, we did. It was perfect.
That was good. Yeah.
Oh, man, I've lost my train of thought. That might be the whole experience.
Sex. Something about sex. We're talking about sex somehow.
Yeah, but I don't remember why. I don't know why I went down there.
I think we do know why.
So let me say something about this real quick. Even though you were talking about that, maybe this will help segue a little bit. So, I actually feel that when parents take up for their kids, if they're pastors' kids, right? When they take up for their kids, that means the world to the kids. And there was one time I can remember Dad telling a story in his sermon about something he did that I actually didn't. Oh, Sheldon said cabs in the car.
Sheldon, cabs in the car.
That wouldn't be good thing you stopped talking about that.
Good thing I stopped you earlier when you were going on your confessional rant.
Do y'all remember that story Dad told that one time? We were already grown by this time, though, that someone came to him
the prayer thing
after church and told him that his kids had their eyes open during prayer.
Jesus.
And he said, yeah, well, I don't know where that effect came from. But then he said, Dad was like, the guy didn't even realize that he was telling on himself that in that moment, in order for him to know that our eyes open, his eyes had to be open. And I don't remember, he was using the story for something else. I guess he was using the story about hypocrisy. Maybe it was about the plank in your own eye and the splinter in the other person's eye. I don't know what the thing was, but I remember taking like a 5 or 10 minute pause in the sermon after he did that with my chest like this. Like, I felt like that was him sticking up for me. I never heard. He never told.
He never brought it up.
That we had our eyes open during prayer. Yeah. He never told us the guy told him that.
We found out about it 20 years later in the story he told about it.
It wasn't even 20 years. It might have been 15. I feel like I was in my teenage years when I heard the story for the first time. Okay. But my point is, those kinds of things help to reinforce this idea that even though you have a calling as a pastor's family member, your calling is not unrealistic. You are still a regular kid. And when parents do that well, I actually think their kids live life with less pressure. Like you can mess up. You're gonna mess up because you're a kid, and I don't expect you to be superhuman just because you're a pastor's kid. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like that helped me, and that may, going back to your previous thing, that may have made it so that I could experiment with life like a regular kid would, and come away from that unscathed. You know, I didn't leave the church. I ended up, of course, becoming a pastor myself. So that could have gone a million different ways. And by the way, man, one goodness, I'm just really thinking about now the different things that we did as kids that are not just, against pastors' kids. Some are, Christians shouldn't do that, and some have to
in
do
terms
with
of the
law.
yeah,
The law.
That's straight up illegal. I mean,
I'm like,
there's no two ways about it.
If we had gotten caught just in one of those things, I mean, our lives could have been vastly different than they ended up being. So I just thank the Lord all the time. You know what I'm saying? For allowing me to be a kid and mess up and still be able to come back. Anyway,
you mentioned how you didn't leave church.
That's
you didn't leave the church, I should say.
Yeah.
And we also mentioned how our experiences were different, and that's one way that our experiences are different, because you didn't leave the church.
You did leave the church.
Claire and I both did for a period of time.
Claire's back.
No, it's a good question. It's a very good question. We'll get to that.
So why don't we take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and talk about why we left the church.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
And I'm going to play the commercial, but you're not muted, just so you know. All right, here we go.
This episode of the PK Podcast is brought to you by The Truth Shall Set You Duty Free Shop, the first all-Christian duty-free shop in existence.
Tired of traveling to another city or state and having no idea where their Christian bookstore is?
Need an appropriate tract to share with your seatmate?
Sick of renting a car and there being no indication that the previous driver is a follower of Christ?
Then stop in the Truth Shall Set You Duty Free Shop to pick up your Christian-themed reading material, clothing, and novelty items before you board that plane.
Mention the PK Podcast, that's PKPODCAST, at checkout and receive 7% off your first 7 items of $9.99 or more, Sunday through Friday before sunset, and 3% added to your purchase on any item between Sunset Friday and Sunset Saturday.
That's right. Mention the PK Podcast, that's PKPODCAST, at checkout and receive 7% off on your first 7 items of $9.99 or more on Sunday through Friday before sunset, and 3% added to your purchase of any item between Sunset Friday and Sunset Saturday, because should you really be traveling on the Sabbath anyway?
Now, back to our show.
Thank you to our sponsors. We appreciate their support and letting us produce this show. You need to unmute yourself, Paul. Oh, you did. No, you didn't.
No, Paul didn't unmute himself. But that is hilarious.
I just did it.
I think it's funny to add to my bill. I'm buying it on Sabbath.
There has to be some kind of punishment.
I mean, really? Why are you flying on the Sabbath?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's funny.
Oh man!
At your duty-free shop.
So
before
we broke, were you about to tell your leaving the church story, Paul?
I was going to ask you about yours.
Me?
Mm-hmm.
You want to start with
what's the question?
Well, I mean, what is it that made you kind of distance yourself from the church?
So let me start by saying I feel like the way that I behave has a lot to do with my personality.
I kind of feel like that's always been true for you.
Yeah, like I was thinking about this last night. One of the things that I've never had a problem with, and I know so many people who struggle with this so much, and I just don't understand it, is saying no.
Right. You don't have that issue.
I have never had that issue to the point where I should probably have an issue with it a little bit.
Yeah.
but I've never had any issue with it.
You're a genius.
All right.
So a big part of the reason why I'm not going to say left the church, because I never like stopped paying. I've always believed in the idea of what church is supposed to be and of what community, like spiritual community, is supposed to be. I never gave up on that. I didn't see it being represented in a way that made me feel welcome. That's the way I'm going to say it. I didn't feel like who I was not only accepted, but not even like, I didn't feel like people were interested in even learning what that was. I felt like people, not I felt like, because this actually happened, people wanted to get to know me once they found out I existed, by the way, because a lot of people
they don't know. They don't know there's a third sibling.
Yeah, they don't know there's a sister.
Right. A lot of people, even now, people still say, "Oh, you have a sister."
Which, if I'm being honest, as an introvert, I'm actually
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
But when I really think about it, I'm like, dang, that's messed up. But anyway, I never really felt like, most of the time, I didn't feel like people wanted to know who I actually was. I felt like they wanted to know who my dad was. And I felt like they were trying to use me to get to him in some way. And I feel like I was also a very perceptive kid, and I wasn't wrong. Like people were, people do that, and people were doing that to me. And because I'm so introverted, and because I'm just really good at saying no, I'm just like, I mean, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. I'm done. I literally don't have to do that.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And you know, of course, as a kid, you do what your parents tell you to do. So I went to church and stuff, and I didn't dislike church, but I never felt comfortable really in church either. And also we moved around so much that I never made any real connections anywhere where we went, honestly, because I knew we were leaving soon. So I feel like for a lot of my peers, when I hear them talk about their church experience as kids, they're often talking about the fun that they had with their friends at church. And like, they look forward to seeing their friends at church. Like, I didn't have that because I didn't know how to make those connections at that age, but also I didn't have a lot in common with my peers either. I always made friends with people who were way older than me, so it was kind of inappropriate for us to be friends. And I'm 13 with a 25-year-old, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I didn't feel accepted, and I felt like people were using me a lot. And so that just really created a very deep sense of mistrust in people in general, which I still have, by the way. Like, it takes a lot for me to trust that what someone is presenting to me, if it's about me, that it's actually about me. I never believe it. The other day, April said to me about Julia, my niece, that she really likes me. And I was like, why? Like, what are you talking about? And that's always my response, because I don't believe you.
Right.
Now, having said that, I really like myself.
Right.
I've always valued myself. I've always enjoyed my own company. So I know that I'm likable, at least to me. But whenever people say or act like they're actually interested in me as a person, I have really difficult time believing it, just because I felt like it was never about me as a kid.
So it's almost like, what's the catch?
What's the catch? Like, what do you really want?
What did April have to say to convince you that Julia actually likes you?
She didn't convince me. We were in IKEA shopping. So
she just
it didn't really become a conversation at all.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about it.
Okay.
But I don't know what to be convinced. I would have to hear like very specific things that I know are true about myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then I'd be like, okay, this person actually pays attention. This person actually sees me, and they've decided that this is something that they enjoy. I really, really appreciate it when people who I trust, who are emotionally safe, and now I have a community around me now, so like, I'm good. But I really appreciate it when people give me their time. Because
is that your love language? Are you
I'm quality time. Yes. Because I recognize that particularly at this part of my life and everybody's life around me, we're really busy right now. And like, legitimate with good things. We're doing actual things that need to be done. So like, when people, for example, came to my 40th birthday this past January, but for people who don't know, I planned a trip to a beach in the Gulf Shores and invited some people. And people like bought plane tickets to come. People saved money for it for like a year to come. People got babysitters for their kids. Like my cousin flew in, I think, their parents to watch their kid. Like so many people did so much just to be there. And we didn't really do anything, which
I
is
disagree.
exactly what I want.
I
Like I don't want it. Like we had fun, but like there wasn't plans.
Right.
That was the
I
plan.
didn't want. That was the plan. Yeah.
Right.
So when things like that happen, when people
cooked and
give
ate.
me their,
Oh my
it
goodness.
was fantastic. When
Man,
people
did we-
give me their time and attention, it makes me feel like it's actually about me and not somebody else.
That's something you can give them or whatever.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. Like I'm also very giving too. So like I get it if you want to be friends with me because I'm generous. I want to be friends with generous people too. But that's such a small part of who I am. What about the other stuff? I don't know. So that part about church life just made things difficult for me.
Can I ask you a slightly, so it might be, maybe it won't even make sense. What about the inner workings of the church hurt that perception for you? Like, did you see more about the church than a regular person might because of your vantage point as a pastor's kid?
I definitely think so.
And did that impact you too?
So I think it made me, and I think this is part of my personality too. Is jaded the right word?
Possibly. I mean, cynical. Maybe
I knew so much.
Right.
I knew so much about the inner workings of the church system and how people manipulate it and abuse it at such a young age that I almost feel like I wish I didn't know all that stuff. Because now I'm like, my definition of what I believe a spiritual community should be begins with like authenticity, meaning you're not here for your own specific agenda and you're not going to try and manipulate the system to get what you want. And part of that is because of just I knew a lot, and it's not even like my parents were telling me stuff because they weren't telling me stuff. I was a child, and they knew that me knowing that stuff wasn't appropriate for me to know. But I still knew because I was
You're there.
embedded so deeply in the system.
The proximity makes it that you can see stuff that people don't know.
You see stuff, you hear stuff. Also, people tell you stuff,
right?
Because they're trying to hurt your parents through you,
right?
And they know they're doing that. But as a kid, I'm just like, Dad, like, wow, that's a lot. So, so I think it definitely just the knowledge of what real life is like. It was almost too early for me to know. And so part of that definitely played into why I left. And so when I came back, I really had to unravel, or while I was gone, I should say, or while I was distancing myself, I really had to unravel and unpack all of that and really redefine for myself from a just purely biblical and spiritual perspective, what is church community supposed to be? What is it supposed to look like? So that when I went back in, first of all, my expectations were very different because I know what it's like because I was in it. But now also, what can it be? How can I contribute to what it's supposed to be? And what does that look like? Like that's my point of view now about church. And I keep hesitating to say the word church because I really, when I think of church, the word church, I think of a building, and I don't necessarily like. I understand that people, you got to go blah blah blah, but like to me, church community is bigger than a building,
right?
And to me, the community of the church is more important than the building of the church. So I'm trying to use a different word other than church, even though that's what we're talking about. I'm trying to think of another word because I really mean more than what I think a lot of people think that word means. But I guess I've explained it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Was I supposed to ask that question, by the way?
You can ask whatever you want.
Okay, good. I didn't know if
one other thing that is coming to my mind too is I think it makes a difference when the pastor is as highly respected and popular as our dad was.
That does make a difference.
Because not every pastor is like that. Right. So I feel like we had a high profile, highly visible, highly respected, highly sought after pastor within our religious community from all over the world. Right. Which to me just compounded the problem.
Right.
So one of the ways that I reacted to that, and I still do this, is whenever I introduce myself, you see my name on the screen?
Yeah.
I didn't even do this on purpose.
I
never put my
I
last
saw it a
name.
second ago. I just noticed it.
I always say Clarice, and that's it. And I didn't even mean to do that here. If I had thought about it, I would have put my last name.
Right.
But I've been doing it for so long. It's just a habit now. I feel like I started in my 20s, maybe my late teens, just saying either Claire or Clarice, and that's it. I do not say my last name.
You're inviting a person to know you for you, and you feel
Right.
that saying Nixon is going to be an obstacle immediately.
Well, not I feel, it is.
You know it is. Right. So the moment you say that, like, oh, shoot, are you Tim's son?
Exactly.
Or daughter?
And
or
all this stuff,
was it
all
John?
these
You know what I'm saying?
assumptions, all these
Are you related to Michael?
presuppositions,
You know what I'm saying? Is that you Paul's brother?
all
You know what I'm
that
saying?
comes into, and now the story is about dad and the family rather than about me.
Right.
And I would really, and this sounds selfish, I would really like people to just want to know who I am.
Why is that selfish?
It feels
We all want to-
selfish
don't we all
because
want
I
to be
was never
known?
encouraged to do that.
Yeah, it is.
Like implicitly, I was never encouraged to do that. So even saying it out loud feels wrong, even though I know it's not wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not bitter, by the way. I'm like yelling, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Are you? Is this yelling?
Oh, I'm yelling over here. My mic
Okay.
just be low.
I'm
Your mic is
alright.
your mic is
I'm
weak.
not. I'm
No,
not
no,
meaning.
I
I'm not
haven't heard you
meaning
yell
to.
before. I didn't know if that was yelling.
Yeah, I
It's a
come
regular
across.
conversation.
So Dad's asking, how do you balance quality time with others as your love language and preferring your own company as your personality?
That's
Very strategically. I am extremely specific in who I hang out with, when, and for how much time. And as much as I can control, because obviously I can't, I can't control the universe around me. But I knew, even though I didn't have the language, honestly, until maybe a few months ago, I've known my entire life that my energy, I used to say my energy is low, but that's actually not true. My energy is taken by everything and everyone around me.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel energy leaving my body right now.
You're like Jesus being touched by the
yeah. Who touched me?
Oh.
Like it feels
Something left
like
me
that.
just now.
It's always felt like that. I didn't know other people weren't like this. I just thought that I didn't have as much as everybody else. And so when mine's gone, it's just gone. And really what it is, anything that's stimulating takes energy out of my body. And so I have to like plan. This is one of the reasons, Paul, why I have to have stuff on my calendar on my phone. If it's not on my phone, it's not going to work well because I have to prepare for it.
Right.
Like I have to mentally prepare. I have to like I had a meeting right before this meeting that I've decided I can never do again because that meeting took so much of my energy.
Wow.
And this is the thing I wanted to do all day.
Right.
But because I had to do something else first, and it was kind of an intense meeting where I really have to focus and pay attention. So I used a lot of energy. I was like, I cannot schedule those two things on the same day. I can't do it.
So you're zonked right now.
I want to take a nap so bad. And I'm really trying my best to be.
You're doing good. I think you're
I mean, I'm doing
you
fine.
yelling a minute ago and you were.
That's right. That's why you thought you were yelling and you weren't.
So to
You have the
answer
ability to yell right now.
to answer Dad's question, I just have to be really careful because also what happens is when I get tired, I don't show up the same. My attitude's not the same. My words aren't the same. I'm not nearly as patient. I'm easily irritable because I've just no energy left. And when I used to work at my former job, there was a literal time of day every day where I knew I was going to be done. And that was 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, every day, I had nothing left to give anybody. And this one semester, my department chair accidentally scheduled. I always used to ask for morning classes. And for the most part, she would do that for me. This one semester, she accidentally scheduled one of my classes to start at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Whoa.
And I said, I'm going to die.
Poor kids.
This class is going to be terrible. And every single day before that class, I was like, yo, how can I cancel this class? Like every day I had that, not because I didn't like the students, not because I didn't love the material. It's actually a class I created. So I love the material. I literally had nothing left. So I feel like my energy just releases differently in my body than other people's energy does. And it doesn't replenish. That's the other thing. Like I'll be replenished after I go to bed and wake up the next day. Then I'm like, I'm up. But throughout the day, my energy doesn't, it just depletes only.
Camille says me too. So, and it's like a lot of E's and a lot of O's. So
Yeah.
I think that's an introvert
too.
thing
Yeah.
more than it is a Clarice thing. You know what I mean? I think
Well, it's also, if anybody knows what the Enneagram is, this is the thing that I just learned about. The Enneagram is one of those other kind of assessment tests that focuses more not on who you are, but why you are who you are. It focuses more on like your motivations and stuff like that. And for anybody that's familiar with the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 5. And one of the things, it's numbers. This numbers 1 through 9, and each number means a different thing. One of the things that characterizes number 5s is that from the moment they wake up in the morning, everything around them is taking energy from their body. Every single thing is taking energy from their body. Now, I'm blessed because I don't have anybody in my house but myself.
Right.
So I don't have a plant to take care of. I don't have a pet. I don't have any kids. I don't have a spouse.
Right.
And sometimes when I think about people who live those kinds of lives and like are enjoying it, I'm like, I could
how they do
never survive in that
Right.
environment. It's just
Right.
not going to happen. Or
Right.
I'll just be crabby all the time.
Right.
Like I just can't do it. So Enneagram 5s have a certain amount of energy every day. And once that energy is gone, it's just gone. If it's gone at noon, oh well. If it's
That's
gone
it.
at 8 p.m., fantastic. If it's
Right.
gone at 1:51, what are you going to do? But I still got to
Right.
show up and do the things.
I
So
can't help it. You noticed that you picked the time that it is right now.
I know I
Yeah.
did.
I thought that was funny. That was very
So-
interesting.
So yeah, it's a very long answer to Dad's question. But I think relating it to being a PK, it was hard.
Because I wanted to ask you that. So I think the thing we have that's different about us is our personality styles. I'm obviously more extroverted. I'm probably the most extroverted of the three of us, and you're clearly the most introverted of the three of us. Paul's probably in
Mhm.
between somewhere. And I actually, now when I look back on our moves and stuff, you just said something about you never really connected with anybody. I connected with everybody immediately. But I think that had a lot to do with my personality style.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy that people don't even make that sort of connection. They don't let you be a kid, and then they don't let you be who you are in terms of your
Right.
personality. Like you have to be this way or that way. You got to be up front. You have to be, liking everybody and talking to them and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be nice if, and I think the only people that really have the power to do this are the parents. It would be nice if someone would advocate for you when you're younger and help people to understand that, it's okay to be an introvert or an extrovert.
I think people don't know what that even means a lot of times. Though.
Right. I agree with you.
And I would also
Definitely
say
didn't know when we were kids.
Right.
No, not at all.
I would also say this though. I think church is really geared toward extroverts. The way
Agreed.
church
Everything is geared toward
hold on.
extrovert.
Hold on. So hold on. Let me challenge you a little bit on that. Black church is geared toward introverts. White church is actually geared toward extroverts. Excuse me, backwards.
Yeah.
Black church is geared toward extroverts. White church is geared toward introverts. So now that I'm in the conference that I'm in, and I visit a lot of white churches, what I notice is that number one, Black people who are not extroverts, oftentimes are labeled as not Black enough. And Black people who are introverts are much more comfortable in white churches because white churches tend to lean introvert. I've visited enough of them now to see it. And this whole time, or for years past, I always thought it was like a race thing or something, but I don't think that's it. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, certain cultures tend to value the introverted things, and other cultures tend to value the extroverted things. I don't know why, but anyway. So I would just challenge that one little thing. But I agree with you. Black church is definitely geared toward extroverts. So you're probably going to feel. So Claire, I would say to you, you may feel more comfortable if you found like a super introvert church, and there's a lot of them out there. They're just not going to be Black.
I like Black church a lot.
I know.
I don't want to be in the sanctuary. I really don't want to be in the building, and I'm just real talk.
They watch it online.
But I like Black church a lot.
Right.
and there are things that I feel like Black congregations have that I don't want to miss. Like I want to experience,
Right.
on a very subdued, like low volume.
Yeah.
On mute. It's just I want to on mute.
Have you guys
Yeah.
ever heard of those silent parties? Have you heard
Yeah.
I've heard of a silent disco party.
They did one of those for OU Live, and Julia was talking about how great it was. Everybody had headphones on. They were all in there, listening to whatever. They could pick whatever channel they wanted, and then they would just dance or whatever. What if we did something like that at church? What if everybody had headphones?
With dancing?
Not dancing. I'm just saying, what if you had silent church? What if everybody could have headphones on, and would that be appealing to you?
I would. Channels? Is there like 3 preachers and like 2 different praise teams?
No, all the same stuff. It's just, there's no reason to say anything out loud because you have headphones.
And I can turn the volume down. Sometimes I get so overly stimulated that it actually hurts my ears. Like any kind of sound will hurt my ears. I don't know if you guys remember this, and this is turning into a different conversation now, but I don't know if you remember this, but when I was a kid, my constant refrain was, why can't everybody just leave me alone? I used to say that all the time. And I wish that as a kid, I had the words to say, this is a lot.
I need space, yeah.
I need space. Can I just go to my room?
Right.
Or it's like going to bed is still to this day my favorite time of day. I just want to go to bed.
Yeah.
Because it's quiet in there.
Right.
It's so quiet. And I have complete control over the environment. And also being in a family with 5 people, there's always something happening. And I'm like, it's too much. I can't.
So like the times when John was practicing his saxophone, and he was following us around the house playing the Poirot theme.
I would never do that. You're making that up.
How did you feel during those times? So John was like,
I really want to give credit.
John used to be practicing his saxophone, right, in whatever room we're in, and me and Claire would leave and go to another room. John would follow us and keep playing the saxophone.
I don't remember that at all.
We're in now.
I don't remember that. That's a lie.
Funny.
So what about you, Paul?
You got 3 minutes.
We don't have time.
Who cares?
We're talking.
Are you guys seriously doing a dad right now? And this is your show.
Yeah, but I don't want to.
You want.
I don't want to be here longer than about an hour.
Okay. So let me ask you a different.
I also have to go to work, but I wanted to ask you something though.
Okay, go ahead.
As our last question here. What's the craziest thing a church member ever said to you as a PK, not as a pastor, but as a PK?
So the crazy thing about this is that I suggested that you
and then you forgot.
I never thought about it. So I don't know if I have any crazy things anybody's ever said to me. So the time I remember that being a pastor's kid meant something different was when we were at Pacoima. I was only 9 years old. We had just moved there. And me, you, and somebody else were running around outside, not even inside the church. Like we were not in the sanctuary or anything like that. We were running outside just playing.
Mm-hmm.
And some lady pulled me to the side while playing and said, how would your dad think if he saw you doing this? And I was like, first of all, I was taught to be, respectful. So I wasn't going to like tell this lady off or anything. But in that moment, I was very hurt by the question itself. Because I thought to myself, really 2 things. Who do you think my dad is that he would have a problem with a kid playing?
Right.
That's number 1. Number 2, like, what exactly am I doing? I'm trying to figure out. And then I said, wait a minute. Because I had never until that moment connected that being a pastor's kid meant something different. Because our parents didn't put that on us. So people were probably doing this all the time. I just didn't know. And someone did this to me and I was like, what? So I wouldn't say that's crazy, but I would say that's the most influential. I don't want to use that word.
Yeah, memorable.
Yes, it's literally the thing I remember. That's is the most pivotal. I will say that. It literally alerted me to this idea that I'm not like every other kid. And it was actually very painful for me. Anyway, I don't know what I said to the lady. I think I stopped playing. I don't know, but I just thought that was crazy. Anyway, I don't think I ever asked Dad about it. I wish I had, because he'd probably be like, "Man, go out there and play, boy." And I was
exactly.
But...
That's interesting. I wish we had more time, because now I want to know, and I'm thinking about for myself, how being a PK has influenced fun in my life? Do I get to have any? What does fun look like? Does fun make me feel guilty? Am I allowed? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many unintended consequences of being a PK that it's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. But all I want to know is, and I'm glad you teased it and all that stuff. All I want to know is more about Paul's story about him leaving the church, what he thinks, influenced that and all that kind of stuff. And I need like actual details. You know what I'm saying? I was there and I remember, but I'm just saying, I think the audience needs to hear that. You know
we'll talk about that next time. In fact, I was actually thinking,
and we actually don't know when the next time is.
Right.
I was going to say maybe our next episode we'll just have John back on and we just kind of continue our conversation and we do a part 1, part 2.
Oh, we do a 2-part. That's a good idea.
That's fine to me. I have no problem with that. Just put it in the
put it in the chat.
Yeah, no, not in the chat. In our calendar, or whatever, the shared thing.
Oh
yeah. So we'll do that. So we'll back. John, that lady wished she could play too. Exactly, Camille. She was jealous that you were playing and she didn't get to play.
Maybe. You know what I'm saying? But to me, it didn't make any sense at all.
That's ridiculous.
But like I said, I think that's the first time. I think just now was the first time I ever realized that was hurtful. And what it did to me was it made me feel like I can't be normal. Guys, I was 9, and I know how young I was because we had just moved there. In fact, I might have been younger than that. When we moved to there, was I 7, Paul? Were you 7?
I was 7.
That's right.
I was
3. I was 9. Yeah, you're right. You were 3. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. I was like 9. I might have just turned 9 or something like that.
Not even double digits.
Right.
You didn't even get to enjoy.
Hold on. You know what happened after that, Paul? You know what we started doing after church? After church was over, you and I would go to Trevor Kinlock's car. It's his mom's car, and we would sitting there and talk after church was over. That's what we would do. Because, well, maybe I don't know if this I don't know if this has anything to do with why we were doing it, but I don't think I ever played at Pacoima again. I don't remember ever running outside. You know what I'm saying? Like the message was you have to act like an adult right now. And that's what we did the rest of the time. We would literally have intellectual conversations in the car with Trevor, who was about 2 years older, but in his mind he was like 40. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was like 11 going on 40.
Trevor didn't have a PhD back then?
Right. You know what I'm saying? I think he was working on it.
That's what I remember.
Anyway, I just connected that right now that maybe that's why we did that. Because we couldn't play.
Right.
Oh, man.
Wow.
You're about to say you're mad now?
Not right. Not allowed to play. I think that's what we'll call this episode. Episode 1 is going to be called Not Allowed to Play.
That's good. That's good. I knew a title would come in somehow.
At some point.
Yeah.
Not allowed.
Well, thank you, John. We really appreciate
Unbelievable.
we appreciate you coming on today, and also we appreciate you coming back for part 2.
Yes, thanks.
Whatever that is. If you guys haven't done this, like and subscribe to our whatevers.
Right. We probably should have started with that.
Yeah, because when our next episode does come out, we'll put out something telling you when it'll be happening. So yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, a couple of weeks. Thanks, John, and we'll come back with John next time too, and we'll continue our conversation. That's the end, right?
Well,
that sounds good.
Do we end?
I didn't know you had that. I actually did that earlier. I didn't know you had it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I got all kind of stuff.
But I sound just like her, don't I? Oh yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
You actually really do.
That's not bad, John.
You really do.
That's not bad.
I was just kidding, but wow, you're right. That was pretty close.
Unbelievable.
All right. It is time.
All right. So the end.
Thanks for having me on. That was good, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. You have outro music. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you next time on Club PK, where we will continue our discussion with John Nixon II, and for more laughs and fun and secrets.
And another commercial.
There's definitely gonna be another commercial. That's happening.
More commercials. All right, later.
Bye.